we're here now, and Amy's final moments on this earth were to solve this case for us.
In Texas, just like in Missouri and South Carolina before them, investigators identified Robert Brashears in a sexual assault and murder case through DNA. But for years, the Austin quadruple murder case had a DNA problem. They only had a Y profile and not a whole lot of it. Knowing that in the late 2010s, Angie Ayers decided to take some action of her own.
So I started going other directions, and it just happened to be that CC came up on my radar, and without letting anyone know, I just reached out to her.
That would be genetic genealogist CC Moore.
We'd been testing Y DNA since 2000, and what we first all put our time into was creating surname projects, where we would get people who had the same surname to test to see if they had the same direct paternal line.
I just simply said, my sister-in-law was murdered. We really need some help in the DNA expert field. I know you're a genealogist, but if there's any way if we could give you part of the sequence, would you be able to work it backwards? She was more than happy to help.
As Moore recalled, Ayers contacted her in 2018. That's the same year she identified Robert Brashears as the killer of Sherry and Megan Shear in Missouri, Genevieve Zatricki in South Carolina, and as the rapist of a 14-year-old girl in Tennessee.
I didn't see enough other people paying attention to him, which is why I'm thrilled to talk to you.
As Moore told us in Chapter 4 of this podcast, she built a timeline of Brashears' known movements and crimes for investigators once she found his name. She was able to put him in a lot of places at that time, but Texas was not one of them. Former prosecutor Mindy Montford also spoke with the pioneering genetic genealogist about working on the Austin case.
CC Moore had been talking to us about Yogurt Shop. While she is creating this profile and this makeup of Robert Brashears, she's talking to us about Yogurt Shop. And, she just didn't have any Texas ties to Brashears, so she never even thought to put them together.
And ultimately, Moore could not use her skills back then to try and uncover the Yogurt Shop killer's identity.
And we were really hoping to do genetic genealogy on that case, and they just didn't have the DNA. You have to, at that time, you needed more DNA than you do now.
Yeah.
And so they just didn't have it. And before I had worked with autosomal DNA, I worked with Y DNA a lot. So I did try to help them with their Y profile that they had, but it just wasn't. If it had hit Brashears, if we'd gotten that surname, I would have known immediately, oh, it's Robert.
Moore told me when she learned Brashears had been identified through DNA in 2025 as the Yogurt Shop suspect, it only confirmed what she told Missouri investigators about him 7 years earlier.
In fact, that was one of the things I really emphasized in my briefing with them when I first introduced them to Robert Brashears was, you guys need to get this out there because there's going to be other crimes. I just felt it in my bones.
The missed opportunity to consider Robert Brashears as a possible Yogurt Shop suspect led both Mindy Montford and Angie Ayers to update me on a huge project Angie first told me about in the fall of 2025. They are working together alongside former Sacramento County District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert to start a nonprofit called the National Cold Case Center.
We have VICAP, but we don't have just a national cold case database. And I really believe if we did have something like that, which hopefully we will soon, that's what I'm working on, but we would be able to connect the dots a lot easier. And I think we would have found out about Brashears sooner.
Montford explained the idea for the center came after Schubert, one of the lead prosecutors on the Golden State Killer case, came to Austin for a conference. Golden State, you may recall, was solved through genetic genealogy just a few months before Robert Brashears was identified in Missouri, South Carolina, and Memphis, Tennessee. Montford told me Schubert offered her assistance on the Yogurt Shop case, and the two got talking about the need to bring more resources to these kinds of cases.
there's got to be a hub, something more of a resource center for these cases that investigators can turn to, and how frustrating it is knowing that these agencies have solvable cases, but they don't have the money to do the testing or the genealogy. So we've been saying for a long time, we've got to do something, Anne-Marie, we've got to do something. And so before Brashears even came out, we were setting it up. We were starting to talk about it.
They also wanted to include a family resource component so victims' families don't have to wonder where to go for information. That's where Sean and Angie Ayers come in. The Ayers are also involved in the creation and development of the National Cold Case Center.
Like, do you just need me to reach out to your detective and ask what's going on? Maybe you don't have time. Maybe you don't know how to do that, or maybe you just don't want to. Let me do it for you. I will be the contact person. They can give us the information, and we can give it to the families.
So every family gets an Angie Ayers?
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Or if they don't know what questions to ask.
Sure.
Or where do I go?
It's not a group you want to be in until you're in it, but
Yes.
when you're in it and you can lean on somebody who's been there with you, who can say, I know how to do this for you, what a gift that will be.
Yes. And it could be like you said earlier, some families don't want to be that involved. We could be the liaison.
The project has become so big, Mindy Monfort left her position at the Texas Attorney General's office to focus on it full time. She told me they are just waiting for federal approval of their nonprofit status and completion of their website.
I believe in it so much that I really think to do it, you've got to do it right, kind of go big or go home. And so Anne-Marie, we decided let's do it. It's now or never. And the Ayers, they're our partner as well. And the timing just was right.
And it is also time for you to get involved. If you've come this far with me, you know a lot about Robert Brashears. You know his crimes, the states he's been in, his stints in prison, his lies and excuses. Austin Detective Dan Jackson told me they are actively looking at a few more cold cases right now. And Jackson believes you could make a real difference.
Think about, where we know he was, and if there's lots of internet sleuths that find, unsolved crimes, unsolved murders.
What should they be looking for?
These were almost every one of them we know of had a sexual assault component to it. Mm-hmm. Small caliber weapon and pretty much everything. 22 in most of them, but he like that 380. I mean, if there's any more 380 unsolved murders out there, I want to know about it.
Or with 2 guns?
2 guns.
Victims bound.
Bound, young, typically, but not always. And, for the most part that we know of, he was in the South, give or take. I mean, but that doesn't mean he didn't. I mean, who knows? He could have committed crimes on the West Coast for all we know. So I think really just the public being aware of them, and somebody will go, oh, you know what? That sounds like that murder I remember in my hometown from 20 years ago. They never did solve, and sends a tip in going, you should look at this case because it's a lot of these cases get filed away, and they're if there's no evidence at the time, and they end up being unassigned. Like there's nobody working them. Mm-hmm. So the public is going to remember these small town murders way more than a cop who didn't work there 30 years ago.
Small town murders are hard to forget. They tend to blend into the soil of a community, changing the way things grow. People move differently, react differently after a friend or neighbor is struck down unexpectedly. And it is only made worse when it's a stranger who rolls into town, destroys 1 or more lives, and then leaves that small town shattered in his wake. That's what Robert Brashears did in Portageville, Missouri, on a warm spring evening in March 1998. Sherry Shear and her 12-year-old daughter Megan did nothing more than choose to enjoy that Saturday, until Brashears pulled into their driveway. He violated their home, stole their lives, and then ran away like a coward, hiding behind his fake names and his family. That's why the investigators who know him want all his cases out in the open. No more hiding, no more secrets, never again. The Southeast Missouri investigators who spent 20 years on the Scheer case found themselves forever changed by that work. I consider retired Highway Patrol investigator Don Wyndham to be the heart of that team. I'm sure you could hear in his voice the pain and the compassion he felt when he talked about processing the Scheer crime scene. But Wyndham can also see the good that comes from good police work.
And I appreciate how dedicated you've been to keeping on top of this and working this. And you know, I a lot of things probably don't need to be shared in the media, and some things do. But the one thing that really does is when you see good officers doing good work. I mean, we see enough of the bad. When you see good officers doing good work like they're doing right now and completing those tasks, I'm glad you're showing that to let everybody know that, there's still hope.
Wyndham's work collecting a possible DNA sample and fellow investigator Jeff Heath's insistence that it be tested again years later are credited with ultimately identifying Robert Brashears as Sherry and Megan's killer. But Heath told me the credit belongs to the full investigative team.
And it wasn't like, I get to pat myself on the back and take all the credit for everything. It was a collective effort, if you will.
No, but it must be nice to just take a moment and think, you know what? Just basic, smart law enforcement, attention to detail. We did that.
Yes.
There were 4 men in law enforcement who, for me, were the faces of the Scheer case. The New Madrid County Sheriff during much of the investigation, Terry Stevens. The investigator he dedicated to the case, Chris Hensley. Highway Patrol Lieutenant and then Captain Phil Gregory. And lead investigator, Highway Patrol Master Sergeant Bud Cooper. I asked Stevens, Hensley, and Gregory what departments across the country should be doing right now when it comes to Robert Brashears.
I think the key to that is when you've got a cold case with some similarities, look at it hard, run it out. If you got DNA evidence, definitely compare.
Right.
And who knows? I'm just a firm believer that there's more cases out there that are still unsolved.
We need these smaller departments to go back through all their evidence and see if because technology has caught up. So, now what they wouldn't have tested, 20 plus, almost 30 years ago.
They have to keep sharing the information. They have to keep working with other agencies. And as technology advances, if the patrol or New Madrid County or Greenville or any of these involved agencies have something that can be retested or added to a different database, some connections are made with DNA. We've talked a lot about DNA. Others are firearm connections. And you've got all those in this case. So hopefully, if there are other victims out there that can be attributed to Mr. Brashears, that will happen. They'll make that connection.
We lost Bud Cooper in May 2025. He was just 60 years old. It's been hard not to talk to him about all of this. I am grateful you have been able to hear from him throughout this podcast, thanks to the handful of television interviews he begrudgingly gave me during the Scheer investigation and shortly after the case was solved.
It was a good one to solve for everybody.
And when it comes to our part of the Robert Brashears story, the lion's share of the credit for unearthing a dead serial killer goes to Bud. Terry Stevens put it this way.
It wouldn't have been solved without Bud's dedication. Bottom line, Bud took this case to heart. He felt like this happened in his backyard, and he took it personal. He took that ball and ran with it, and he kind of drug us along with him.
I mean, she's the reason this case got solved. You cannot. I mean, she's the only reason, because it would have got stuck in a box. It did get stuck in a box.
Back in Austin, Texas, Sean Ayers credits his wife Angie with keeping the yogurt shop case at the forefront of investigators' minds. One phone call, one idea at a time. I want to take you back to that late September day in 2025, when Austin authorities told the world Robert Brashears was the new yogurt shop suspect. Much later that evening, the Ayers had to make the long drive home and needed to stop for gas. Angie wasn't overly familiar with Austin, and Sean leaned in to ask her if she knew exactly where they had stopped.
And I went, no, and then I looked over to my right, and we're right in front of the yogurt shop. And in that moment, I was like, yeah, that's fitting. And we drove over there, and there was, and I don't know who these people are, but they were in a little white SUV, and they saw us. We pulled up and had the light shine over the plaque, and people had left flowers and little knickknacks on the plaque. But these people in this car got in, and they were watching, but they were like, oh my, I don't know who they were, but bless their hearts. If you're out there and you've ever listened to this, thank you for giving us that moment. But also, that was our moment. It felt different. My children even left us. They went back into the car to give us that moment to ourselves. That was the first time that we actually were able to go, holy cow, look at where we're at. That was it.
And that's probably the only 5th or 6th time I've been there. I didn't know it was going to help the way it did, but I'm glad it did it.
It was a good feeling. Because before, I think it felt dark, and they were still there, just, someone please listen to us. And when we went back that night, it was kind of like, yeah.
Now, the Ayers are ready to help other families, to be their voice, to call, to push, to listen.
Anyone that's suffering right now in a cold case that needs help, hang on. We will be able to help you. Just give us some time to get this up and going. And most of all, don't give up.
This is where Chasing a Ghost ends, for now. We will be back when there are significant breaks, new cases, or new information to share on Robert Brashears. This podcast was researched, written, and performed by me, Kathy Sweeney. All recent interviews and video elements were shot by my creative partner, Caleb Phillips. Video versions of the podcast were edited by the two of us. This podcast also utilized portions of archived stories and special reports I've done over the past 20 years with my television station, KFES 12, in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. We would like to thank everyone who took the time to speak with us for this project. Their time, knowledge, and kindness were very much appreciated. We'd also like to offer a special thank you to 3 people. First, to Austin Detective Dan Jackson and Missouri State Highway Patrol Master Sergeant Chris Hamlet for answering every question I've had along the way with an amazing amount of knowledge and patience. And finally, to Deborah Brashears for the photos and information she has shared, but especially for her trust over the last 7 years. Thank you for listening.